This piece is called Interval Cubes. It was done in 2013. They are a series of 12 cubes or squares that I created for each of the intervals in the chromatic scale. It's another one of my crossover points between music and art, which I like to explore. The initial idea was to create photographs, actually. I wanted to do macro shots of a vibrating string for each of the intervals in the chromatic scale. And then I realized it had already been done many times. Also, I've been looking at what are called Chladni patterns, which are the shapes that occur on top of a vibrating plate. So here's an image here. And they're created by using a bow on the side of a metal plate. And it creates these patterns. But I decided not to go in that direction because it had already been done. So I had started to do some sketches trying to figure out very simple symbols for each. So like the first one there, it's a unison. Well, the obvious metaphor for a unison would be a circle. So that's very simple. And then I started to metaphorize it for each one. So the next one is minor second. So I decided to use lines or bars and create a distinction between a minor and a major second by making the lines thicker. And so it follows that kind of pattern throughout the series. I had also been looking at various different kinds of symbols or semaphores that were used in history. And here's one. I think it's from the 18th century. It was a way of communicating. It's like a Morse code or even smoke signals. It's just done with different symbols. Now here's the completed series, just displayed horizontally. You could display them this way, but they are not set up at the moment for wall display because they don't have the sawtooth backing on them, because I had wanted to make them so that they could be mounted on some kind of a flat panel or just to be displayed on a shelf, and to have the sawtooth hanger on them would kind of scrape them up, so I decided not to do that. But in any event, this is what they look like. And again, each one is 6 by 6 by 2. I had started to play around with different ideas based upon each of the intervals in terms of framing. This is an example of a lightbox idea where each of the intervals would have a separate shaped frame. And here in this first example, it would be a triangular frame that would have on the inside of the frame there would be like an LED or some kind of a light strip that would give it an inner glow. I decided not to pursue this because it would have been kind of expensive, but it's a variation, a possible way to display these in a different way rather than just the boxes. So what I'm trying to do here is create a generative system based on these symbols. Then I had started to do some isometric boxes based on each of these. And here's 4. I didn't go beyond this. So here's unison. This is minor second. This is major second. This is minor third. And eventually that's how they looked. So this was my way of digitally prototyping them. Now I will show you each of the cubes just in sequence here, and I'll just name them as they go by. Now, this is the unison. This is the minor second. This is the major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, diminished fifth or flat 5, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major sixth, minor seventh, and major seventh. This is a possible configuration vertically, going from unison at the top to major seventh at the bottom. Here's a possible way to mount these. These are 9 from the series, and I had spent some time just rearranging them into some kind of a aesthetic pattern. I haven't decided yet how I want to mount these. They are still all separate, and I display them on a shelf. But another idea might be to fix them like this. I haven't decided yet. It's possible that I could fabricate these in some kind of other material, say in like an acrylic. That way they wouldn't be damaged by use. Part of the idea of these is to use them like blocks, like Legos. This is a configuration based on whole tone scales. Whole tone scales are built on whole pitches, so it would be C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and so on. It's a way to display them if they were mounted like this. Here's an image of them just as displayed on a shelf. As you can see that the symbols also go across the top of them. Another image. Another image. Here they are on the shelf. And as you can see, I made this kind of a staged photograph with these books here. So I included Joseph Alber's Interaction of Color. This is Visual Intelligence by Donald Hoffman. A book by McLuhan. This is Metaphors We Live by Lakoff. And I think this is a Ramachandran book on cognition. So I just wanted to play around with that a little bit, showing that it has to do with cognition, where the symbols are abstractions, that are metaphors just as they are as framing devices, as Lakoff would say. Here is the back with the felt on it. Well, it's actually Velcro. This is here's another configuration as they would be glued together as a sculpture. I had thought about that as well, but I haven't decided yet whether that's really a good way to do it with the originals. If they were fabricated in some kind of other material, then this might be a good idea. Here's one that's called Cluster. Here's another cluster here. For some reason, it reminded me of Peter Halley. Peter Halley did Neo Geo paintings. Neo Geo was the name of the movement in the early to mid 1980s, where it was just these geometric patterns based upon this grid. I think he got the idea from a window that had these like jail bars on them. And that's all he's ever done in his career. I think he's still making these. They're very large. I would say that this piece is probably 8 feet wide. Here's another spin-off piece that I did. It's called Sevenths. And it's a very narrow and long piece that uses the symbols for the minor and major seventh stacked on top of each other. And they are painted on the front and the back. And it's mid dimensions, I believe, are 2 by 12, 2 by 24, I think. I'm not sure. But it's a child piece. It's a spin-off. Now here's some possible configurations that I had done for possible mounting solutions. What I had thought about doing was making a large framed, like a shadow box. And in the back of the shadow box would be a piece of felt. And then on the back of each of the cubes, there would be Velcro, and then you can rearrange the cubes in any fashion that you want. You'd open up the door. It would have a glass door on it, and then you would place them however you wanted, and then close the door. And this one would be probably 24 by 36, this large one here. And then the other smaller ones is a possibility. It's a possible solution to protecting them, because they are very delicate, and the shadow box would be a solution for that, a way to display them. And here's another configuration where, pardon me, where you can use them as a kind of teaching device in music, where you can use the blocks and arrange them in kind of a melody, or to make chords out of them. After the pieces were done, I had photographed them, and then I started to make works on paper based on the intervals. And here I used the unison symbol with a piece on rice paper. As with the vellum prints, I had used the inkjet printer as a way to make an original. So I took the scan of the unison cube and then printed it on my inkjet printer, and then reduced the circle by 10%, something like that, and then ran it through again. And it created these interesting vertical lines on the side, which I didn't predict, but they're there, and I really like how that looks. Then I took the scans and created digital images, and I created this triptych. It's called Augmented Octave. And when I was working with the scans in Photoshop, I had overlaid them in different transfer modes, and then I named them accordingly. So the first one here is Color Burn, which is the transfer mode I used, and then Luminosity, and then Lighten. And here they are as framed. So they would be 8 by 10 images in 11 by 14 frames. Here's a piece called White Noise, which is, I believe, 12 by 12 acrylic on canvas. And all I did was take the stroke of the unison symbol and just made these very faint markings on it as a kind of quote-unquote white noise. Another spin-off piece is called Phased, and this is also a printer piece. So I had run the intervals, the various interval symbols, through the printer several times, and it created this collage. And then when the collage was done, I used watercolor to create the color. Here's another variation using the printer. What happened here is that the paper got stuck in the printer. And you see these kind of glitchy black lines here. And I liked how that looked. I just thought that was an interesting happy accident. And again, it was black and white, and then I added these other color elements just manually. After I had been working on this for, I don't know, over a year, the cubes themselves took a while, and then I started to explore the different variations on this through different media. And I created a little artist book, and I'll put the link in the description, and then you can look at all the various ways that I played around with this idea. And I'm still working with it, trying to add works that are either in the black, white, red series or in the interval series. So it's always feeding my desire to fuse or to merge music and art into some kind of a system that I use. And the main metaphor here is the system, the 12-tone system in music. And I've reduced them to symbols. So in any event, I hope you enjoyed this. The works are still for sale, and I've got some prints available. and I'll put the link in the description.